and welcome back to the Clarity Convos for Wedding Pros podcast. I'm your host, Aislinn, and I am so excited to have you guys back here today. Today's episode is going to be absolutely amazing. We are going to be talking about some manifesting things. So if you have been interested in manifesting or you want to get back into it, wherever you are with it, I know that this is going to help you. And I'm so excited for you guys to tune in and get something out of this. Before we get started, I just wanted to share a comment that I got from one of my clients about a previous episode that we did here on the podcast. So the episode that we did was You Don't Suck at Sales. And I love this episode so much. There were so many good, juicy things. So if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to that episode. But what she said was that when I asked what makes you different than everyone else in your industry, because everyone's packages are basically the same, it definitely challenged her. On a long car ride home, I had time to think it over, and now I'm going to be doing client calls a completely different way. This makes my heart so happy because I want this podcast to be full of different takeaways and aha moments and things that you guys can go implement immediately. So it makes my heart really happy to hear that that is already happening for you. So today's episode is going to be really cool. We're going to be talking about manifesting. So whether you are new to manifesting, you're like, oh my God, this buzzword again. Or if you're like, okay, I really think I want to get back into creation mode and I really want to get back into being intentional with what I'm creating in my life, this episode is going to help you. So there is a thing in manifesting where you act as if. You act as if you've already signed that dream client. You act as if you already have the large social media following. You act as if you've already booked a $1.5 million wedding. And I love this concept. But the thing is I see a lot of people doing it in a way that takes away the fun. And honestly, manifesting should be fun. It should be playful. It should be gamified. It should feel like you're doing something really creative and intentional. It shouldn't feel like a place to judge yourself. And it shouldn't feel like, why don't I have it yet? I should have it right now, because that right there is going to keep it from coming to you, because that's not the energy of receiving. And that's not the energy of it coming into your life. So the thing that I see a lot of people doing wrong, and I hate to say wrong, I just mean that it takes the fun out of it. And to me, what's the point if it's not going to be fun? So what I see people doing is they go too big and too far outside of your subconscious comfort zone so that you get to judge yourself and you don't actually have to take any action. So I'll give an example. You're trying to act as if you only have luxury clients. And right now, that's not the case for you. And your subconscious is going to freak out. Your subconscious is going to be like, we're not ready for that. We need to stay comfortable. We're going to give you a belief that you're not worthy of that. Icky, right? That's so icky. But that is the ego. That is the subconscious just trying to keep you safe and just trying to keep you in the status quo. So I'm going to give you guys a new way of doing this that will change your life and really help your subconscious get on board, because that's really what we're fighting here is subconscious beliefs. We're fighting core beliefs. We're fighting reprogramming that needs to happen. It's just old programming. And so when we start to do these things that I'm going to talk about today, we can really get our subconscious on board in a way that feels really good, in a way that isn't going to immediately come up against friction. So the entire reason why your subconscious is not on board with the whole act as if thing is because you're trying to jump from where you are to where you want to be without skills, without embodiment, and without the experience you'll need once you actually get to that place that you're trying to go. So I want you guys to imagine this. Imagine that you've decided to act as if you have 10 new clients and they're all paying you, let's just say $20,000. Each one of those people is paying you $20,000 for your wedding photography services. But today, in your current reality where you're sitting right now, when you're listening to this podcast, you only have 2 paying clients and they're paying you $4,000 for your wedding services. Your brain, when you try to act as if you have 10 new clients and they're all paying you $20,000, is immediately going to step in and it's going to try to keep you safe and it's going to try to keep the status quo. This is exactly why I recommend to my clients when we're talking about manifesting that we do incremental upgrades so that you can really get your brain on board, because otherwise it's just going to kick it right off. I actually talk about this in Success Accelerator program, that when we are doing affirmations, that they have to be 50% believable to your brain, or it's just going to auto kick it and be like, nope, that's not happening. So this is why I talk about incremental upgrades. This is why I talk about getting your subconscious on board, because that's really where the change starts to happen. And when you get your subconscious on board, you're able to change core beliefs. And how beautiful is that? So I'm going to give you guys a real world example of all of this from my life. So last year, I really wanted to start a podcast, and I had really big dreams about what it was going to look like. And that was all perfect. I decided that I wanted to have a large audience for my podcast. And I decided I wanted to have amazing guest speakers. And I really wanted to reach thousands of people every single week. Big dream, huh? Right? That's a really big dream, because where I was standing right then was I had no podcasts, and I had no following, and I had no guest speakers, and I did not reach thousands of people per week. But the thing was, is that I saw other women in my close proximity who had podcasts, and I knew it was this really powerful way to connect with my community and share really potent messages with you. So in that moment, I could have acted as if, and I could have been like getting super nitty gritty about what do I need? How do I do it? What's the exact timing of this? If I don't do it by September, then all is lost, like putting a lot of parameters around it. And I could have like acted as if and said, if I already had a podcast, what would I be doing right now? And that probably would have kicked my brain right off board. If I already had a podcast, what would my topics be? That would kick my brain right off board. And if I could take a moment to really, really get into the nitty gritty about all the things I wanted to manifest with this, it would probably kick my brain off board, because it was so far away from where I was currently existing, where I did not have a podcast. My brain would have jumped in at that moment and told me all the reasons why I can't have it and all the reasons I'm not qualified for it. So here's what I did instead, so that this podcast could actually become a reality. I practiced who I would be when I had a podcast. So what I started to do in that time was I started to pitch myself to other people who had podcasts that I wanted to be a guest speaker on. And I was okay with them saying no. Like, it was totally fine if they were like, nah, maybe not. Or like, oh, maybe like, 2023, you can come on the podcast. And since then, what's so funny is I've actually been on almost a dozen podcasts or as a guest speaker in other masterminds. So I pitched myself and it worked. I also practiced by hosting IG live interviews with other people. I practiced by getting a microphone and using it in my trainings and going on YouTube and figuring out how to use a microphone, because they're a little complicated sometimes. And the thing that happened was when I finally decided to launch my podcast, this podcast that you're listening to right now, I had practiced all of the skills that I needed so that when it was actually ready to do the thing, it was so much easier than I thought it would be, because I had practice. So I want you guys to think about that example for just a moment and realize that a year ago, I did not have a podcast. 2 years ago, I did not have a coaching business. Wild, isn't it? Wild. You don't have to get into the nitty gritty in order for your thing to manifest. You have to practice who you are becoming along the journey to the thing manifesting in your world and like the thing manifesting in your existence. So the question I want to ask you guys right now is, what are you practicing for? Right now, I want you to answer that question, whether you're driving in your car or you're sitting at your desk editing or you are in the shower, like wherever you are listening to this podcast. I want you to ask yourself, what am I practicing for right now? What skills am I gathering right now? What embodiment pieces am I starting to embody right now? What am I practicing for? So that when the time comes and the opportunity presents itself, you already have the skills, you already have the experience, you already have the mindset. It's all there for you when you are ready to actually take a hold of that opportunity. So I'm going to give an example as if you are a wedding planner. So let's say you're a wedding planner and you decide that you want to do destination weddings, but you are currently not booking any and you live in the middle of the country and you just don't know how it's going to happen. You've seen other people do it and you're like, man, I really want to do that. I really, really want to do destination weddings. That's something that's really calling my heart. And you've decided this is something I'm going to do. I want you to think about, how can I practice the skills that I'll need so that when one day a destination wedding comes along and they inquire with me and they're like, oh, we love your work so much. We can't imagine having anybody else plan our wedding. You are prepared. You have practiced so much that it just feels like, well, of course I'm going to do this wedding. It doesn't feel like, well, I'm not qualified to do destination weddings because I've never done them before. No, no, no. You have practiced the skills you need that are transferable to doing destination weddings. So I want you to think about, how can I practice these skills? This might look like learning how to do itineraries for guests who are coming out of town. You already have that skill set, probably. It might look like building up a team of assistants who are willing to travel when the time comes. Because let's think about it. If you decide, oh, I really want to do weddings in Mexico, but I live in Kansas, if you have people that you have to have on a wedding day, like assistants that you have to have on a wedding day, but all of your Kansas assistants are like, yeah, no, I don't really want to go to Mexico. Like, that's not my dream. What are you going to do when it actually comes to somebody hiring you in Mexico for their wedding, for the destination wedding, and you don't have the assistance? So I want you to think about, like, okay, do I need to have certain people who are willing to travel with me for weddings? It also might look like creating a process document for how you're actually going to do destination weddings, so that when you're sitting at that consultation table, you already have a process that you can explain. So this is a real world example, like for me, and also like a imaginary example for a wedding planner of what it can feel like and what it can look like to practice who you're becoming and to embody who you are becoming. So right now, these are some of the things I want you to think about. I'm going to give you guys a whole bunch of questions. And if you're driving, please, you can answer these out loud if you want to, but please keep your eyes on the road. So here's some of the questions I want you to think about. What is it that I really want to create with my business? If nothing was bad or wrong about what I wanted to create, what would I want? If I knew it was inevitable, if I knew my success in my career was inevitable, what would I want? And if no one was going to judge me, including myself, if I wasn't going to judge myself, what would I want? What is it that you really want to create? What is it? And can you be okay with who you're becoming along the journey, and not just looking at the thing as like an end goal, and then as the end goal, like you never do anything else after that point? You are a constant evolution of a human. You are a constant evolution of your business. Can you start to practice who you are becoming along the way? Can you start to practice and embody who you want to be? And not just be like, oh, at some point I might be booking weddings where they're paying me $30,000. Who do you want to be on the way to that photographer or wedding planner who's making $30,000 per client? What skills do you want? What types of mindsets do you want? What are the things that you need to gather on your journey as you head towards that goal that you have? And here's the other things I want you to think about. I have more questions for you. Right now, how are you practicing being that person today? Like, not next week, not next month, not next quarter. Like, how are you practicing being that person that you are becoming today? How are you practicing the embodiment of having that thing or experience that you want today? What story are you telling about it coming into your life? Are you telling the story of like, yeah, someday I'll be a luxury wedding photographer. Like someday, like somebody might book me. I don't know. Like there's a lot of other people who are more talented than me, like who are out there in the wedding world. That's not the story. That cannot be the story. If you continue to tell that story, you're just pushing your dreams further and further and further away. So the story that you could tell yourself instead is, yeah, I'm practicing and I'm learning along the way. And I know my dream clients are out there and I'm so excited to meet them. How beautiful is that story? If you told that story to someone at a networking event, that's so much nicer to hear than like, yeah, at some point I'll get my dreams. And like, at some point, like, it'll happen for me. Instead, decide that starts now. Like you get to start practicing that right now. So I want you to think about, how can I become a living, breathing embodiment of that version of myself that has all the things that I want? And is there anything in my life currently that needs to get cleaned up around this? Is there any mindset things? Are there any process things, workflow things? I'm not telling you to do another rebrand. So please don't decide like you have to do another rebrand in order to become that person that you're trying to become. But I want you to think about, like, right now, what are some of the things that I can start practicing in my life that I'm going to continue to practice as I become that person and as I start to get those things that I'm going for? So I could literally talk about this for hours, and I probably kind of do in some of my other places that I talk about these things. This actually comes up a lot for my private coaching clients, and it also comes up with my Success Accelerator program clients. So we talk about embodiment a lot. We talk about energetics a lot. We talk about manifesting a lot, because these are the things that will shift your core beliefs and start to reprogram your subconscious to allow these big, beautiful dreams that you have for yourself start to come to fruition and start to come into your reality. So that is today's episode. I hope you guys got something really beautiful out of it. It was really fun for me to think about how to explain this. And it was really, really fun for me to do this episode. So if you love the podcast, I would be so honored if you would share this with some of your wedding vendor friends or photographer friends or whoever you want to share this with. And if you want to leave a review, that would also be a beautiful thing. I do have things in the show notes for you guys. If you are interested in working with me in any way, I do private coaching. I have a year-long program called Success Accelerator program for wedding professionals. And then I occasionally have some other programs here and there as well. So I hope you have an absolutely beautiful day. This has been such a dream to do with you and such a dream to share with you. If there's any topics you guys want me to cover, you can send me an email. That's also going to be in the show notes, or you can come find me on Instagram at Aislinn Eileen Coaching. I love you guys. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I hope that you will start to practice today some of the things that we talked about in this episode. I will see you guys on the next episode. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.